Hey guys, so we are going to do a deep dive into the idea of expressions. So we've used expressions before, but we're going to be talking specifically about looping expressions as well as how we can link expressions, how we can link layers and different things together by using expressions. So let's take a look at, let's make it like a new project here in After Effects. Let's make a new composition. We're going to make 3 total compositions. The first one we're going to be doing, we're just going to call time expressions. So make it 1920 by 1080. Make it 24 frames a second. I'll stick with resolution being a quarter. My background color, we're going to change that immediately. But let's change the duration to 15 seconds and 0 frames. 15, 0, 0. Let's keep that there, right? 15 seconds, 0 frames. And I've already made a expressions palette, but you can find one over, you can create one over in Coolers or Adobe Color. So find yourself a palette, and let's make a new solid. And I'm going to the reason why I'm choosing a palette is because I want to, flip-flop the colors back and forth a couple of different times, right? So make a new solid, and pick one of the colors that you have in your palette there. And let's make a new text layer here, and we're going to say time expressions, and this is the same color as before, so I'm just going to choose a different color over here. Time expressions. So whatever font you like, but let's choose something different than, say for instance, like the default Adobe Caslon. Let's center that here in the composition. And let's create 3 stars. So find your star tool and just draw 3 stars. Hold down Shift while you do it, just so they're all kind of hanging out there at the same, rotation here, or same sort of like position. I'm going to choose a different fill for this. That looks good. And we'll just put this here. Once again, we're gonna make sure you put the anchor point in the center of the content here, and position that somewhere around here. Put it in the center, a little bit lower. Well, sure. Center. All right. So press Enter on the keyboard to rename that. Call that star 1, and then hold down the Control button. Press D twice to make two more stars. So we're going to pull these 2 stars. The 3rd star will go on the end. The 2nd star will go in the middle. We can put that right in the middle here. And select all 3 of these and make sure they're all in the center and they're all distributed horizontally. Okay, so I think we could probably just push them here. Well, let's put this a little bit further out. Now we'll distribute them horizontally. Okay, once again, 3 stars. They should be centered in the composition here, and we're going to create an expression using the using the rotation sort of transform control. Right. So press R on the keyboard for rotation. Hold down the Alt key, and just type the word time. All right. So for the star 1, right? If you play it. It doesn't look like much happens, but if you just watch, keep your eyes on that star, and then go to the end, you can see it turns just a little bit, right? It turns a little bit. The idea here with time is that whatever your attribute is here, you are going to essentially take the time of the composition, in which case is 0, and that's going to be the value here. And in this case, it's going to be degrees. So in this case, we can just say time, and then say at 1 second, it's going to be 1 degree. And at 15 seconds, it's going to be 15 degrees. So it's going to go over the course of 15 seconds, turn 15 degrees. So what we can do here for star 2, this is the same thing. Hit R for the keyboard, R on the keyboard for rotation, and then let's hit time. But this time, let's put a little asterisk next to it. Let's put the number 100 next to it here. Okay, so in this case, you can see that it's like here at 1 degree, at 1 second, it's 100 degrees. At 3 seconds, it's 300 degrees. And then at 4 seconds, it's already turned once, and we've added 40 degrees to it, right? And so we're just sort of spinning away, right, in the same amount of time. And so we end at 15 seconds with like four full rotations. All right, so with star 3, let's once again hit R on the keyboard. Hold on the Alt key, and then simple enough, let's have it do this the opposite direction times negative 100. So little asterisk there. So this is an asterisk. This is our okay, there we go. And so you can see the two stars are going to be spinning in opposite directions. Okay, so let's finish this off by getting our text tool here and just clicking once to press time. And then we're just going to duplicate that a couple of times. We'll just center this with the star here. And then just duplicate that twice. So the third one we can go over this way. And the second one we have over this way here. And we're just going to put time and then put the asterisk here. 100. Same thing over here. Times 3, and then just times -100. Okay, so what we learn here is simply that if we want to adjust something, we want to make and have it just automate and just have it go for whatever time, we can just put the expression time in there, and it'll change over the course of the entire composition. Now, the problem here is this. If, for instance, we have a attribute that has multiple variables, like say, for instance, position, it's a pair of things. It's both X and Y. If I hold on the Alt key and just press the letter time there for this, for time 100, I'm working with this little text thing here, it's going to give me an error. If you click at the little thing here, it says, error at line 1 in property position of layer 1 in comp time expressions. Expression result must be of dimension 2.1. As in, it must have 2 dimensions to it, X and Y, not just 1. Time is just simply 1 dimension, so we don't want that. So position, anchor point, scale, they'll all have the inability to use the time expression. If you click on position, though, and you right click on it and you sort of click on separate dimensions, and then you put the time in for, say, for instance, the X position here, or the Y position, put time, you'll see it'll be at the top here, because this is the 0. And then after like 15 seconds, it'll be just like so times 4 here. And it'll like go down. Of course, like 4 times, this is going to be like, what, 60? So maybe like times 100. Right, there you go. Right, and so the idea here, once again, is that time is only able to be used if your value has like just a single dimension to it instead of 2 dimensions, like the position and scale and anchor point, among others. Okay, so let's go ahead and just get rid of that expression there. So we have this. This will sort of complete our first composition here. So I'll make a new composition, and we'll call it. All right. So with our new compositions, make a file, new composition, or composition, new composition, and we're going to call it loop expressions. Okay. So loop expressions. Okay. So once again, let's go. Oh, I'm going to have my little thing here. I'm just going to right click on this new solid. And what we'll do is we'll make it the opposite color. We'll have like the text be opposite colors and stuff. So I'll just grab time expressions over here. I'll just grab this Control C, and then over here Control V, and then make sure this is set to be this color here. Right. Okay. Cool. All right. So we got time expressions. Okay. So let's create 4 circles here. So I'm going to go over here to my shape tool. Make sure I have nothing selected. Hold this button down, ellipse tool, and just hit 4 circles. And the circles will be kind of small. I'm going to sort of line them up a little bit with time expressions. So I'll just duplicate these one by one. Control D. So actually, I'll just click this. I'll say circle 1, and that way we can just drag them down one by one. Right. So circle 4, we can just drag this straight down. Actually, before we do all this, make sure this is got its anchor point centered. Control Alt Home. Okay, and we'll just drag these down. 4, 3, 2, 1. Select all these, and make sure we go to a line and distribute them vertically. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, so for circle 1, what we'll do is we're going to add in a keyframe for position. So in this case, we're actually adding keyframes. With time, we didn't have to add keyframes, but for the loops, we have to add keyframes because the loops are going to take what we've told it to do, and it's going to make it, do something, right? So it's going to automate this. So in this case, I'm just going to move it forward a little bit, or move it towards the right here some, so forward, and then so it's just going to move forward. I'm not gonna ease anything. I'm just going to leave it like that, right? Okay, so if I just go forward here, yeah. So that's so what we'll do is we'll do the same thing for each one. We'll just keep position, and I'll just make sure that everyone has one there, and then over here. We're just gonna move it out. This is 837. Okay, so everything they all move at the same time, right? Okay, cool. All right, so with circle 1, and I'm gonna rework this order here just so they respond. So circle 1's up here, 2, 3, 4. Right, so circle 1 is up here, so they're sort of in the order that they appear in on your screen. Okay, so circle 1 position. Let's hold on the Alt key, right, and let's put loop out, and then in parentheses type the word cycle inside 2 quotation marks. Okay, so you probably already know what's going to happen, right? It's going to go forward, and then it's going to go back, and it's going to keep going the same thing over and over again, right? There's no smooth loop to this because normally we close this out, but I'm not going to close it out for now. It's just repeating the same things over and over again, right? So we start off at this position here at this keyframe, and we end here, and then we just start over again, right? So that's what the loop out does. Now the cycle. So now what happens if I were to say take this cycle out and just leave loop out with nothing inside, right? It would continue to cycle. So cycle is actually the default sort of argument here in this code, right? So in the parentheses, we just tell it what we want to do. In this case, we want to loop out on a cycle without putting anything there. It's just going to default the cycle. Okay, so with this right here, hold on the Alt key, click on position, and then let's type in loop out. In this case, let's put in ping pong. Okay. So what happens here, right? So in ping pong, what happens here is essentially what it does is just plays these 2 keyframes in reverse, right? So we go from this keyframe to this keyframe, and then essentially we just go back to the beginning, and we just kind of go back in this repeat, ping pong and back and forth, like you're playing ping pong, and here comes the ball from one. You get the idea, right? So we're ping pong. So we go across the entire composition. It continues to cycle back and forth with that. So consider doing that instead of like looping out with a cycle, and so you have one fewer keyframe to put in. Okay, so here we go, circle 3. Let's do the same thing. We'll hold on the Alt key, and we're going to put in loop out, and then let's put in continue. Now, continue, I would say, has a limited use because all this does is just kind of keeps. It's almost like the time. It's almost like the time. Shall we say? Expression, except for it's useful for your. It's useful for your position here, right? And so in this case, you just basically start your pace here. In this case, over the course of 1 second, I want to move this far, and so it's going to continue. It's just basically going to continue that pace, whatever it is you're doing, whatever like direction you're going, or whatever. Like say for instance, it's the same thing with scale. Like say for instance, I put scale on here. So I'll put scale here for like 100%, and then I'll put scale over here for 200%. And we'll take this away in a second here. So if you want to visualize this, once again, we're just going to do loop out, continue, and then you see what happens here. It's going to like get bigger, but then it's going to continue to get bigger, right? It's going to continuously get bigger. The idea is it's going to like take the pace of change, the rate of change, and then extrapolate it out for the remainder of the composition here. So that's what's going on with your position when you press continue. So it's kind of like, it's essentially like the, let's put this back down to 100 here. It's essentially like the time expression, except for it works for things that have 2 dimensions. So the same thing can happen with your anchor point or your scale or whatever you want to do. You're just taking and so if say for instance I want this to go faster, all I would have to do is just tweak this over a little bit, and then suddenly it would go across the entire screen a lot faster. So I don't want to do that though. Okay, so the last thing we're going to do is the offset, which is a little bit different. So I'm going to say loop out, and then we'll put offset. Okay, and so let's see what happens here. It looks as if it's doing the same thing as continue. So let's add in a second part of the keyframe here. Let's do this. Let's go over here. We're going to let's actually take off the loop for now, and we'll come back to it in a second. All right, so let's go for 2 seconds in, and let's see if we can't kind of match this up with this guy over here. We'll pull him forward some, and then what we'll do here is we'll pull this little guy down. Like so. And then we can kind of like pull this inwards. So it's done. It's good. So see if you can't get it to where I'm holding on the Alt key while I drag this direction handle here, and so see if you can't get it to where this guy, it's going to basically just going to go to the left, and it's going to dip down, right? Okay, so this is the keyframe here, right? So and dip down. Okay, so if I were to go over here and press loop out. Continue, or let's see what happens here. Okay, it has that same rate of change going across, right? But if I put loop out and then I change it to offset, let's see what happens. Okay, again, no, oh, here we go. Look at that, right? So it's going to basically continue on that same those same actions, but it's going to add on to the value. But essentially, it's kind of like the loop out cycle, right? Wherein we have like the same thing happening over and over again, but it doesn't reset the values. It just basically takes the same animations that we did and it just sort of extrapolates it out. It's kind of like the continue. It's kind of like time and continue sort of combine here, right? We've got multiple things happening here. In this case, we're going forward, then we're dipping down. The offset allows us to continue on doing this, right? There's more to the offset that you can add into it. It's actually pretty powerful, but ultimately we're just gonna leave it there here. Okay, so let's add in some text. So I'll just get my text tool here. And we're going to, once again, put in the different... Oh, let's make sure this says loop expressions. Let's actually say loop out expressions is what we'll call this. And then for the first one over here, we'll put in cycle. And let's make sure this is lined up pretty well with this ball here. And we'll just double click on this. We'll just duplicate that and call this one ping pong. And then we'll duplicate this. And we'll call this one continue. And then we'll double click on this or duplicate that. And we'll call this one offset. Okay, so with that being said, let's see if we can't make sure. Let's look at what this looks like here. Looks good. Yeah. So just keep in mind, continue and offset are sort of like the time expression, except for, you can use them with position and other things that have dual values. All it's doing is just like taking your keyframes and sort of extrapolating them out. Cycle and ping pong are good at like looping and automating and just sort of like having things happen over and over again. And they can be basically, these things can basically be applied to anything that has keyframes. The only difference I would say would be if you had keyframes for your path, for like the shape of your path, in which case it's going to take a little bit more, I would say, involved code. All right, so one more thing, and then we'll put them all together. All right, so our last composition that we'll actually make two more compositions, but the next composition we'll make is going to be called linking expressions. Okay, so once again, I'm going to get my little expression thing here, my palette here, make a new solid, and I'm going to make it the first color that we had before, And then we'll just grab this text here, copy that, and paste that, and just call it linking expressions. Okay, so we're going to put in three. Sure, we'll put 3 circles. Let's grab our ellipse tool and let's put 3 circles in here. Just let's put them right here. Whoops, make sure nothing's selected here. 1, and then we'll just duplicate this. And I'm going to call this one. I'm gonna press enter here, and I'm going to call this one slider 1, and then duplicate this, and once again pull these like in such a way to where slider 1, 2, and 3 are all like you know, kind of in the order that they are appearing. So we're going to pull this over in here. That's 2. There's 3. Okay. So once again, Control Alt Home. I should have done this before I duplicated them, but Control Alt Home for each of these. And then we're going to align them up together. So we'll go to align, make sure it says to selection, and we'll distribute the layers vertically here. And we'll just sort of move these around up towards the top. Okay, so I'm going to go to slider 1, and I'm going to hit P for position, and I'm going to right click on it, and I'm going to say separate dimensions. And I'm going to make a keyframe on my X position, and I tell you what, we're going to do the same thing. Well, just make sure there's no keyframe for Y position. So I'll do the same thing for slider 2, P for position, right click on it. Separate dimensions, get your X position up there, and then P for position, separate dimensions, and then X position here, right? Okay, so let's press U on the keyboard. So they're there, and we have them. We can, all right, so we can kind of like move them around independently of the Y dimension without worrying about them, okay? All right, neat. All right, so everything's got, so we'll just sort of set them right now. We'll set them all to 400. All right, so keep that number in mind. They're all set to 400, and we're just gonna keep that number in mind at some point. Okay, so let's create a oh, I don't know, some shape over here. We'll make a star, and we'll make it a different color. So let's grab our star and make sure it's sent. The anchor point is centered here, and we'll change the color to something different. Okay, so let's take a look and see. Look at our positions here. If I hold on the Alt key, you can see we've already got transform X position. That's great. Okay, cool. And so if I were to go over here to our shape layer and maybe hit S for scale. Let's hit S for scale, and let's hold down the Alt key and click on scale. And then let's see, once it gets transform, scale. Okay, we're gonna type in several things. Okay, the first thing we're gonna type in is this comp, right? What this basically is doing is it's referencing that we're gonna be working we're gonna be linking this sort of attribute to a different attribute somewhere else, right? So in this case, we're gonna be linking it to layer 1. And so we're gonna put a period here. The period basically lets us know that we're going deeper, right? So we're in this comp. Now we're gonna reference the layer, and the layer is gonna be called, so it's a layer, and then we're gonna name the layer in parentheses in this right where slider 1. Right, that's the layer we're gonna be working with, and I'll put another period here. And in this case, we're gonna put in position, or let's say property. I think it is. So we'll say property. Okay, this is a position. And then we'll put in, I want to say just 0, I think is what we'll do. Right. Okay. Didn't quite work. I think what we'll do instead, let's just go ahead and delete this for now. And instead what we'll do is we're just going to take scale, hit this little pick whip right here, we're just going to drag that over to position, X position, right? Scale. So we've got this. Let's see if we're just going to open this up. Here we go. This comp.layer slider 1 transform X position. There. Okay, there we go. Cool, right? All right. So let's do this number here. I'm going to put in parentheses here around this whole thing, and we're going to want to make sure this starts off at 100% scale. So in this case, because the X position is set to 400, I'm going to subtract 300 from this. All right, so now it's set to be just like that, okay? Now it's just normal 100% scale. So if I were to move this back and forth here, it should... Okay, gotta take off this semicolon here. Oh, I see. X position. We're just gonna take X position minus 300, then put the semicolon back, and we'll take away this parentheses here. There we go. So now you can kind of see here, right? If I were to go over here and I were to sort of kind of take this little guy and just kind of move him around, I can move him around and move him back and forth. And this is just going to be, because as I move him back and forth, I've got my little control key here, right? This is my little control slider. I can control the scale of my star just by moving this guy around a little bit, right? By virtue of this little composition, this little thing. I wonder if I take away this temp here. If I this temp. What happened if I did all this? Anything? No. I think I did. Right, yeah, right. Right, so temp essentially makes it the value here. I wonder if we could just like change this to whatever we wanted to. But the idea simply is this. Because we have this parented here, we have this little expression that essentially lets us know that this comp is what we're working with. This layer called slider 1 is what we're referencing. We're referencing its transform controls and we're referencing its X position. And we're just sort of modifying that by taking it down 300 points because it's already at the 400 coordinate, the X coordinate of 400. So this is how this is working, right? Okay, we're gonna do the same thing. We'll just kind of pull that to the side. Let's let's scale. Let's hit T for opacity, right? And let's link opacity to X position as well, right? And so right now, the opacity here is if we click on this, it's going to be the X position again. But in this case, so once again, this is a little more simple because of all this. So this comp, layer slider 2, transform, X position. And again, I'm going to subtract this by 400 here. And so that way it's going to totally disappear until I move it up, right? Once I move it back and forth to between 400 and 500, right? Is it going to, be visible, right? So we got multiple controls here. We can make it bigger. We can make it easier to see. We can make it smaller, make it harder to see, back and forth, right? These are our different controls here, right? Our different sliders. Okay, I'll put these back to where they were. I'll put this back here too. All right, there we go. And then lastly, let's add an effect. Let's find under effects and presets, let's find blur. So search for blur and find Gaussian blur and just drag it on top of the shape layer 1. And so in this case, well, let's see if we can't pull the opacity back up. There's slider 2. So get your slider 2 up there. Let's actually take away the position keyframes for now. There's no need to put this keyframes up for now. Well, we'll keep it for now, just so we can reference it back. All right, anyways. Okay, so let's pull it all the way up to 500. And let's put the blur here. Not blur. Oops, didn't mean to do that. Let's get our effects here, our blurriness. Let's click on blurriness, the stopwatch up there, and then we'll hit U on the keyboard for blurriness. We can just uncheck that. And once again, pick up this to X position for slider 3. So in this case, the blurriness right now is set to 400. So I want this, if I just click over here under blurriness, and once again, take my blurriness down to minus 400, it's going to allow me to increase the blurriness by moving this around, right? And then reduce the blurriness by keeping it where it was. Okay, so let's go back over here to slider 1, slider 2, and slider 3, right? Let's pick the position on there for each one of these 400. And now we're going to create a series of expressions here. So with with each one of these things, we're just going to loop these out, right? So let's go between 400 and 500. So for each one, we're going to go up to 500. So add like 100%. So either double the size here. All right. All right. And then down here, 500 as well. And we can actually move this to be a little more centered. And for each one of these things, we're going to hold down the Alt key and we're going to press loop out, and we'll do a combination of we'll just do ping pong for each one, right? So it's just gonna go back and forth, ping pong, right? So just copy that and you can paste that for each one of these things. And so let's take a look at what this looks like here. Okay, lastly, I am gonna just click on these guys here and make sure they are set to be under a line. Okay, cool. All right. Okay, cool. All right, there we go. All right, so. All right, so this is 500. Let's do 500 here. All right, so there we go. All right, so the back and forth. All right, so I'm going to adjust the speed of them a little bit, and maybe even like kind of alternate the sort of time. So I make this a bit longer here. So that way it's not like, you know, the same thing over and over again. You know, we could just sort of see them. Well, how about this? What if we were to say, for instance, yeah, you know, that's actually okay. And then let's label them as well. So I'm just gonna like put text over here. So let's get our text tool and just say, so this one right here, shape layer 1. I think it would be helpful though. I think it would be helpful if we were to say, for instance, change these to something that like, how about this? We'll just so this is the opacity here. So we'll just do scale for the first one. Scale, let's type in scale. Let's make sure the text is the right color. And then we'll duplicate this. Opacity. And then we'll do one more time. Blur. Okay, and so that way, if we were to say, for instance, let's start off with slider 2. Let's have that one be here. So it's supposed to be on the keyboard for all these guys to show up, and we'll just drag these down or up to where we can see them all together. All right, so loop out ping pong. Let's start off with opacity, and then we'll loop out these guys a little bit later. So the cool thing about loop out is that loop out will actually just loop out from where it ends. So in this case, you know, we can see like the scale is going up and down, right? And then blurriness will start to come in as well. So I want to see if I can do like, you know, maybe a little bit longer time with opacity. And then blurriness, maybe blurriness can be even faster. That way, it's easier to see how they're affecting each other. All right, neat. Okay, cool. So all this to say that the expressions do more than simply just, you know, make things go, right? They do a little more than that, right? And so when we're working with these expressions, understand that we're working with this language that has its own syntax, its own grammar, and all that sort of stuff, its own vocabulary, and just practice with them just makes perfect, obviously, right? So here we go. So time expressions, loop expressions, and then linking expressions. So let's make one more composition, call it final expressions, or so expressions, and then put your name. And then we're actually going to make this composition, new composition, composition settings, make it about like, let's make it 45 seconds or maybe even 50 seconds. So make it 50 seconds long. And then that way when we put in the different, so we'll start off with the time expressions. So put in time expressions down here. And then put in your loop expressions. And then make sure that it starts after this one stops, but with no frames of black. All right. And then finally, linking expressions. Put that in there. And then finally at the end, put in a new solid. You could have it be a different color from before. Or the same, you know, general colors that we have been using. And then put your name on it. So I'll put my name right here. So put your name on that and make sure it's a contrasting color. It's a good contrasting color here. Have it fill up the screen. And again, use something different from, you know, the normal like thing we've been doing. All right, so time expressions, looping expressions, linking expressions. Look at all these expressions where we've learned how to use, right? And we'll continue working with these to make our animations a little bit more sort of controlled and solid here. All right, so I'm going to export this. Now I have to export this using the render queue, which is going to make it into an AVI. But before I submit it, if I make this into an AVI, it's going to be like, you know, a gigabyte in size. Look at this. It's gonna be like, well, I don't know how big it's gonna be. It's gonna be really huge, right? So if you want to use this just to get this out of your After Effects, that's fantastic. But before you turn it in, you gotta make sure you put it through like Media Encoder or put it through like Premiere and turn it into an turn it into a MP4, because MP4 is gonna be like 1/10 the file size. All right. Well, I cannot wait to see what you guys produce. Make sure that you've got all the different steps in here. Make sure you've got all the different things. Yeah. Well, I'll see you guys in class.